All right, go for it. What is the reason why you voted for Donald Trump?
He was campaigned on, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, which has been a long time coming for a lot of people. Like, I think that's well deserved.
Yeah, but like
So he's the only.
the no tax on tips is like only like a deduction, and it's the case that it's just cash, which already people like are not reporting most of the time.
Yeah, I understand, but it's the same with if you look at Kamala, however you say it,
Kamala.
her $25,000 housing allowance, so to speak, however she worded it. That would
$25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers for new homes.
Okay, that's great. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so then what else? What else? What about it?
That would drive up home prices insanely high.
And not just in the long run. Actually, in the short term, that's the point of it, is actually to stimulate the building of more houses. Because if you have a higher price specifically for the good, then it's going to incentivize more suppliers to produce that good. But the thing is, it doesn't make it less affordable for people who are trying to buy it, who are first-time home buyers, because it is the case that they get a tax credit. So it helps with affordability, and it increases and stimulates the building of more houses.
I tend to disagree on because it was existing homes, was it not?
No, it's for new homes.
I missed that somewhere then because.
Yep. It was for new homes.
So you can stick build a home, and you still would have gotten that tax credit, is what you're saying?
If you're building a house, you would have gotten a tax credit. Yeah, and you bought a house that was just built, like newly built homes. That it's to incentivize the building of new homes.
Right, and that's what they tried to do in the 2008 crisis. I mean, they were lending money to people that couldn't pay it back, but that was kind of their thought: increase home sales, drive up the economy. But look how that turned out. And I was afraid, and honestly think that it would have turned out the same with that tax credit.
Yeah, because what you're doing is giving people access to it without actually fixing the underlying conditions as to why they can't afford it in the first place, while also properly installing certain types of things within the market that restrict certain developers from just gouging you for no reason.
Well, that's what is in place for that. What plan did she have?
There isn't much federally. And in terms of capping the amount in which people can raise, she supported stuff about capping the amount you can raise in terms of rent, on a yearly basis. There's similar ones that exist already in California.
Well, that's rent, but what I'm talking contractors. Was there anything that?
What about contractors?
Up there, you said that her tax credit.
Yeah.
Along with all that, her proposed capping of rent. Okay, yes, I agree with that, but that doesn't help people that are building homes. It doesn't cap what they could charge or material pricing.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I would want that I don't think necessarily anyone talked about would be something that would be related to the level of profitability. Based upon a certain level of profitability, after that, then you can't increase the price.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, and I didn't hear
would be beneficial, in the context of certain markets, because then you're ensuring that there is still an incentive to produce, but then you're also ensuring that there's not gouging.
Right. Yep.
And then also there needs to be like funds that are specifically designated by the government to help with affordable housing, which again we already have to some degree, but we need to extend further, right? And yet Donald Trump doesn't have a single policy specifically for housing affordability. Donald Trump doesn't have a single policy for healthcare, for childcare, for reducing homelessness in this country. He doesn't have a policy for any of these things to reduce the price of groceries.
So that's what I'm saying. I missed it somewhere in her campaign because I didn't follow. I couldn't grasp what she was trying to convey.
Wait, so hearing this back right now, are you saying that now you would have good reason to support Trump? Or not support Trump, not support Trump?
No. What I'm saying is that's why I supported Trump, is because understand, I couldn't follow where any of this, she was conveying to us. Unless the media played such a huge role in this election that certain parts of the country just saw different things. I don't know. So I guess what I'm trying to say, I didn't hear her say that she had a policy specifically for housing assistance that would change that or increase it, or did I miss that somewhere?
The housing affordability policy.
Yeah.
I told you on the $25,000 tax credit for first-time home buyers for new homes. That is an example of a policy.
I didn't hear her.
Given that you know this information now, would you have voted for her over Donald Trump?
No.
Okay, so then what specifically restricts you or holds you back from doing so?
Well, her capital gains increase on unrealized gains.
She didn't have that specific policy for the election. That was Joe Biden.
Well, she was rolling with it from the way I took it.
No.
So you're saying that she was against the 40% unrealized gains tax?
I'm saying that she specifically didn't have that policy for this election. Yeah. I disagree.
Yep.
I disagree with like just having an unrealized capital gains tax rate specifically like that. Just in general, I do think that, like, for example, if it is the case that you're going to use it specifically to buy something like Twitter, then yeah, you should have to pay taxes on it, because you shouldn't be able to say it's realized in order to be able to like say that you can pay taxes on it, right? On that context at that level of money, but then not also pay taxes on it in general. Like you're using it to get the valuation for loans, but not for the government. It's kind of like the same thing Trump was doing that he was found liable for fraud for.
Right. But they use stocks and bonds for income. Like, they're not claiming an income. So if you don't have realized gains through stock because you just gain and then, you sell or how diversify or whatever you do, that wouldn't really affect them.
What do you mean? We can have a combination of long-term realized capital gains and then some unrealized ones specifically for, like, if you're using it as a loan collateral at high levels of valuation.
Correct. Which a lot of wealthy people do.
Okay, I'm confused. Here, let's just clarify. What do you like about Trump? Kelly, think of the dollar.
I like the fact that he is for the people, so to speak.
How so?
I mean, he's just there, like, he's listening to what we had to say. I don't know. I mean,
Really? Who is he listening to? Really?
I want to. A lot of it's Congress. The Republican Congress is terrible.
No, who is Donald Trump listening to?
The people, the American
Really?
people.
Who does he listen to? And the American people, because he's not listening to everyone. He's not listening to me.
Well, you don't know that.
I promise you, he's not. Yeah, I'm part of a big movement of Americans that are tired of his bull.
Immigration side of it, I feel like you're going to reference that here very shortly.
Yeah, we can.
Well, I figured that was coming. There is a lot of case law, I don't have to turn my computer on to find it, that stipulates when due process is guaranteed and when it's not. If you have overstay a visa, that's not a criminal offense. That's a civil offense.
True.
Now, if you say that you overstayed your visa, it's now a misdemeanor.
And do you think civil courts can justify enough evidence in order to be able to deport people?
That they can't, because that's not their job.
Okay, well then you're saying that, like, anyone who overstays a visa shouldn't be deported, because the civil court that's supposed to determine specifically whether or not they were in the country, like, legally or overstayed a visa, it isn't qualified in making that determination.
Right, but that'd be a criminal court that has to decide that, not a civil court.
Yeah, but because the civil court is the only one that decides that currently, because it's a civil infraction and not a criminal infraction, well, then it is the case that that's going to mean that, like, anyone who oversees a visa is going to be able to legally stay in the country, essentially.
Well, if you overstay a visa and don't tell anybody, and then they find at that point it is a crime.
How?
And you will, because it is. I have to look up the exact statute, but if you overstay your visa and don't renew it or don't tell anybody, then it is a crime now. It's not a civil offense anymore; it's a misdemeanor.
Okay, so you said overstaying a visa was a civil offense and not a criminal offense, and now you're saying it's a criminal offense.
Just merely staying here is a civil infraction. Now, when you don't tell anybody for, I forget the exact amount of time. I'm sorry, I did not say that. Let's just say you're here a year after your visa, and you don't say anything, and they find out. At this point, it's a misdemeanor, and you're going to go to a criminal court.
So then again, overstaying a visa is a criminal offense then, not a civil, under your view.
That's not my view. That's the law.
Okay, well let's just clarify further. How is an undocumented immigrant coming to the country undocumented harming you?
It's not directly harming me.
In any way, is it harming you?
Yeah,
How so?
they do. Well, look at the crap we got going on. People that are protesting and riding and hurting people, and
That's because of Donald Trump. That's not because of the fact that undocumented immigrants are in the country.
No, I disagree. I mean, it is a crime to enter the country, not through a port of entry to start.
Okay, so you're still not giving me the reason why it's harmful. I'm waiting. How is an undocumented immigrant coming to the country undocumented harming you?
Like I said, not directly.
Yeah, how in any way, indirectly, directly? Tell me in any way, how is an undocumented immigrant harming you?
It drives up prices. It drives up.
Wrong.
Okay.
No, that's because not only do they provide more demand in terms of services, which actually provides a greater incentive for suppliers to create more jobs, but it also it leads to a greater level of supply, right? Because there's more productive services that are able to be applied in the economy because there's more people.
Okay. Now I'm going to flip that. Why is it such an issue for you if they're here illegally, sending them back?
You still couldn't tell me specifically like how they're harming the country. Well, I'll tell you why. Because anyone who's in the country who hasn't committed a violent crime or bad crime is not harming this country, right? And is the whole point of the immigration process is to keep our country safe and secure. And it's not keeping our country safe and secure by going into communities and without due process, ripping people out of their communities that haven't committed violent crimes or bad crimes.
I see what you're saying, but it's still the fact they came not through port of entry is a crime to start with.
But you understand that everyone in the country, regardless of whether or not they're a citizen, it gets due process based upon the 14th Amendment.
That is not true.
It is true. I've read it on live. Do you want to read it explicitly?
I'm going to read the case law for you.
No, read Article 1.
Article 1 of the Constitution?
No, Article 1 of the 14th Amendment.
I know what the 14th Amendment is. But what I'm telling you is the Supreme Court has ruled, and there is case law that stipulates when to.
Tell me where.
Because
I can explicitly tell you where to look in Article 1 of the 14th Amendment.
Article 1 is it made Congress.
Article 1 of Amendment 14?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said of the Constitution. But yeah, I'm going to look it up, but there are, like, if you have substantial business in this country or vast amounts of property, they can't just deport you for that. If you come here illegally. Like, I don't understand how the way the law is written is very confusing.
Exactly. So the law sucks. So
I didn't say it was.
Why are you blaming an undocumented immigrant for not following a law that, one, is not clear, two, right, takes too long to get into the country, and three, doesn't have any moral basis to it? Like, again, who is the victim of an undocumented immigrant coming to the country?
Lincoln Riley.
Okay, so do you blame Donald Trump for Molly Tibbetts dying due to an undocumented immigrant under Donald Trump's presidency?
I didn't hear about that one.
Yeah, Molly Tibbetts was ban undocumented immigrants under Donald Trump's presidency. But also, I just want to let you know, you try to portray undocumented immigrants as like more likely to commit violent crimes is like an insane talking point. You want to know why? Because undocumented immigrants are multiple times less likely to commit violent crime, drug crime, and property crime in the United States comparative to natural-born U.S. citizens. You and hell, everyone in this live that's a U.S. citizen is more likely and property crime than any undocumented immigrant on average.
Well, I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing is
you were arguing that like it's going to be like harmful or there are violent people that can come to the country.
Well, there are violent people that can come out of the country, but there are statistics that say that we're more likely to commit a crime. Yes, I agree, but it's still the law. That's what I'm trying to get at. You can't enact a law and not follow it. You got to change it. So until that happens, they're doing stuff by the way the law is written. I just advocate for law and order. I mean, the law's there. Why fight it unless you're going to really advocate and get to Congress to change it?
Wait, I'm sorry. You believe in law and order, yet you support a guy that's a convicted criminal held civilly liable of woman that pardoned people who pled guilty and admitted to violently police officers on January 6th. That was good friends with Jeffrey Epstein. That said he was a terrific guy and they likes beautiful women as much as he does. Many of them on the younger side. Right? That guy? Are you kidding me? That guy has not followed the law.
Which part of that do you want me to start on? Where
any of it. None of that's pro law and order.
You
Maybe
have
the pardons. How do we start with the pardons?
What about the pardon specifically? Would you like to know?
Yeah, when he pardoned people who pled guilty and admitted to violently police officers on January 6th. Explain to me how you can support that.
How many of those people took a plea deal just because, their attorney said this is better to plead guilty to that than go to trial?
Because of the level of evidence?
That's irrelevant.
There were people that Donald Trump pardoned that on video, police officers. Don't even get me started. Those people that were on video, police officers, right? You're telling me, right, that those people, right, shouldn't stay in prison? You think those people should be walking on the streets because Donald Trump released them into the country?
I feel that anybody that police officer, anybody that is a human being with the intent of causing serious bodily harm or death should be in jail. Yes, if that's what you're asking me.
Okay. And would you support a candidate that released people in the country that violently police officers?
Obviously, I still do.
Okay. Well, he intentionally did it.
Well, let's flip over to you said about the felonies. In the state of New York, that was a misdemeanor that was changed
no, the law was not changed. So what happened was that there was a predicate crime. So Donald Trump would have committed a misdemeanor if there wasn't a predicate crime.
What's the predicate crime?
The jury doesn't have to agree on a specific predicate crime, but
that's a violation.
No, it's not. An example of a predicate crime specifically would be that he, in this context, one that is true. They just all had to agree that there was a predicate crime in the context of the felony and the jury determination. But in terms of that, the predicate crime specifically would be that like he was trying to restrict this information from coming out to affect his election prospects. That would be
right.
So the falsification of business records was in the furtherance of another crime, right? A predicate crime.
Right. You need predicate crimes to stack to charge somebody.
That jumps it up to a felony.
Correct.
From a misdemeanor to a felony.
So how do you throw a predicate crime if you don't know what the predicate crime is?
Wait, no, they do know what the predicate crime is. They just don't have to agree on what the specific predicate crime was. They just have to agree that there was a predicate crime. Does that make sense? So they all had to have a legitimate agreement of a predicate crime. They could have different predicate crimes that they're referencing, though.
Right, but you still have to cite them. And when it's on your docket sheet has to cite, and your indictment has to cite those predicate crimes.
The jury does not have to cite it.